Welcome, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to Breaking Into Cybersecurity. If this is your first time joining us, a little bit of background about us. This is Breaking Into Cybersecurity, where we talk to individuals who have broken into the cybersecurity field within the past 5 years. They come from a diverse set of backgrounds, so we want to highlight that so that those interested in cybersecurity can also find out from them what they could do to get into the industry. Today we have another amazing guest, Kenny Storms, with another interesting background coming from theater. So definitely something I wanted to have a conversation about, like what does theater and security engineering have to do with each other? So we're going to bring that out in today's topic. We're streaming live to LinkedIn as well as on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you'll see when we next come live. If you're listening to us after the fact, you can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. And on to our guest today, Kenny. You want to give a little bit of introduction to yourself and what got you into cybersecurity?
I'm Kenny Storms, and I definitely had a weird spaghetti path to get here. I'm sure a lot of you out there, like with theater to cybersecurity, does not seem like a clear straight line, and it 100% is not. When I was young, very much into theater, I was doing had an agent, I was doing commercials, going down that path. And then when I got into college, I found directing and got really into directing when I was there. And then after that, after I graduated, was directing and then producing where I could, and then starting to do devised work. And now I actually do sound design still. So I haven't actually left the theater. I continue to try and get out of it, but it's theater is it's a virus you catch and you can't ever get rid of it, no matter what you try. So I've never actually left it. um, but also during this time, like when I was a teenager, was a huge 2600 fan, pretty avid reader of that, which is a hacker quarterly magazine, and was very much into phreaking and phone hacking and like building tone dialers on payphones and getting phone call. I like to kind of tinker, and was really into like the early 90s bulletin board systems, like finding just text and ASCII designs on how to build boxes. And it was just, so I had that interest also. And I think that's the thing is I've just had a diverse uh, amount of interest in my life in general. And then I was working a job that I'd been at for about 5 years and was just struggling. It was a job like where it turned into a thing where I was doing everything. It was a communications company, which was coaching people on how to communicate more effectively. And I got fairly burnt out because I said yes to everything. And so I was doing their sales, I was their client relationship officer, I was doing IT, I was taking care of contract. I did everything because it was a small company. And so got a little burnt out and just wanted to change. And also I taught for 10 years too. That was the other thing. That's probably a big chunk of the picture, and taught theater to 3-year-olds up to 103. Taught at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts for a while, doing improv, devised work, creating musicals, things along those lines. And then I taught for a charter school for a few years after that, which that was maybe one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my life. And, I wish teachers could get paid some more than they do. But anyway, so I had this whole journey, and I was looking at things to do for a generalist because I do have this pretty wide. I just get interested in everything, and I came across this term called a multi-potentialite, which essentially is someone who pretty much will never settle on one career. Usually might have multiple careers in their life. They're usually skilled kind of in the arts realm, maybe sciences, maybe philosophy, history, like all of it. And so I kind of I've always been a little ashamed of being a generalist because I know so many people who are specialists who they know their stuff, and can be pretty intimidating. And so I read this article, and it was the first time ever I maybe started to kind of embrace like what that is, and maybe this is not, maybe I will be okay at a lot of different things, and that's okay. And what came about that was someone was recommending cybersecurity is actually a great avenue to go to if you're a multi-potentialite because there are so many things to do. And you have to be good at communicating with people. You have to be good at, logically thinking through problems, researching. You're probably going to have, if it's a smaller company, you're going to have to be an expert at everything security, which is kind of not possible. But yeah, so multi-potential, I kind of led down this path, and then I came across SecureSet, which is a cybersecurity boot camp here in Denver, and then started just doing research about it, and was looking at their red team kind of engineering program, and just got hooked. And so I did everything I could, like looking for loans, seeing if I could get support from my parents, see what money I could come up with to get this thing paid for, because it just seemed at that time I was like, oh, this is something that I'm coming back to my, my teenage years and coming back into something. And so ended up applying and getting into this boot camp, and then and it was a fire hose of information. And
Yeah.
from there, then it was like 3 days after I finished the program, I got hired at Arcs Review, which is the company I work at now,
Okay.
where I was the security engineer. Where I'm the security engineer.
Okay. Well, let's get into some of the comments, and then we'll dive into your history and your transition just a little bit more. We have the all famous Mr. Paul Cummings. He runs a group that focus on bringing veterans into IT and cyber. He says, "Oh man, love the soft skills that could be used in the cybersecurity environment." Then from LinkedIn, we have Jeff Barron saying, "Red boxes, I miss those." Back to
Absolutely.
your teenage days. Then we have Tyrone Gibbon, theater to cyber. Wow, awesome. So yeah, let's talk about that. So you had your phone freaking days back in the day, and that kind of got you hooked back as you started to think of your multi-dimension approach to your career. Talk about like SecureSet, and before you got there, like what about cybersecurity were you interested in, or was it that stumbling upon this boot camp got you interested in it?
Um, so I think there was nothing specific. I mean, there's always for lack of a better word, the sexiness of red teaming and being a hacker and doing, there's always that. And so I think like there's, it's a cool skill to learn. I mean, like if you know how to lockpick and play around with computers in new ways, like it's a great skill, and can be a lot of fun. And so I think that was kind of the initial thought that I had. Was I just wanted to learn how to do that, and I wanted to learn how to code also, and I wanted to learn more about systems. And I have a hard time settling. Like I keep wanting to go backwards to understand things more and more and more. And so it seemed like a good opportunity, a good space just to go down the security engineering side. And there was like there were two different programs at this boot camp. There was the kind of the threat hunting security analyst, and then there was more of the security engineering red teaming side. And the red team did appeal to me more, and I thought I was going to be a lot more technical from everything I was looking at. But also, security analyst is one of the best pathways into this industry as well. So uh, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I mean, you kind of did. So you had that interest, just that general interest, and then you started to go in. I think that's one of the questions that we get often. There's that sexiness of being a red teamer. Talk about like what you learned was the difference between the red teaming approach that you thought was going to be more technical, maybe how your phone freaking background played into that, and let the audience know, as opposed to the other track that there was, why you chose red teaming.
Well, I mean, I think on the red teaming side, I think one of the things I realized when I was in the program is that as much as I wanted to do that, I was not going to learn this in 6 months, because it really is, something that you have to commit to and continue to learn after you get out of this program. And so I knew once I was in the program that was not going to be the first job I was going to have out of the gate, and that just came down
Mhm.
to experience ultimately. Um, uh, and I think the thing that helped me the most in that program, though, maybe with the background with the phone freaking and like, I think it was part of it. I think it was always just been an interest in figuring out how things work, and that's what helped me the most. Just like to get through that program ultimately. Um, and as far as and like, and you did ask too. I mean, like, what I really wanted to focus on, and this comes back down to that same thing of kind of this multi-potentialite mentality, is I didn't have uh, a focus in mind. People would ask me to be like, so what do you want to do? What's your first job that you want to get out of the gate? And I was like first I was like, anything I could get, really. I mean, it kind of came down to that. But also I was just like, I just want to learn more. I just want to get a job and an opportunity to learn more. And it didn't matter what it was. Like if it was analyst, if it was red teaming, if it was doing engineering, if it was going to be working in a SOC, doing network security, or even like schlepping a wire and wire. I was fine with that. Just something to get in to learn more. Uh, and so I think that mentality still kind of at least kept options open for me. But uh, yeah, always hard for me to focus. It's my curse and
Yeah,
blessing at the same time.
yeah, I have the same thing. Paul asked, I'd love to hear your understanding from the whole theater background. How did that potentially help you land your first role? So let's talk about your transition and how that theater background helped you.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I actually had I struggled at first to get a job, and what ended up getting me the job was because I had a theater background in the end. But it was tough when I first started. I mean, I put out at least, I don't know, I want to say like 50 resumes out to companies, and I got one interview out of all of that. So it was not
Mhm.
like it ended up being a lot harder than I was planning on it being. And I knew it was going to be work, definitely. But I started getting pretty worried. I was like, oh, I have this theater background. Like, this is like, people aren't going to take me seriously. And I just did a boot camp. It's not like I have this extensive CS background or anything. But then I got an email from uh, the CTO at the time of this company called RX Review that said, hey, you have a theater background and you're doing cybersecurity. I really want to talk to you because that's weird. I was like, great. So I went and I went to this interview. And uh, one of the things they said is, part of the reason we wanted to bring you in is because if you were doing theater and now you're doing cybersecurity, it must mean you really care about security. Because why would you make that choice? And ultimately, that's what got me the job. And I'd say, and also the soft skills. I mean, I was good. I did pretty well at that interview to sell myself. And I was also, if there's other things that theater taught me, it's to be transparent and just open. And so, even throughout that interview, I can't remember what the question was. Uh, I think they said, like, I think the question was like, what are all the steps you would take if a breach happened? And I was like, well, one, I'd follow the policies. Two, I would call the people that I know who've been through it because I have no idea. And I said, like, that is a big question, and they appreciated that I had that honesty, and also that I was admitting that I would research and get the right people in the room.
Yeah.
And so I think that openness and transparency helped as well. But I think how I communicated and showed up helped me get in the door on that one as well.
Paul asked, do you think that the amount of OSINT involved or open source intelligence involved in theater play helped in researching your career path?
Uh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, like that is, I think that's one of the things that's great about theater and why I love teaching it is because you like you have to use open source intelligence on everything. You have to learn psychology, history, technical design, um, and do a lot of dramaturgical research sometimes to really if you're actually going to do a decent show. So I think that directing side of me helped me probably the most when it came to how I do research. Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the other comments from Jeremy Swinnerson on LinkedIn is that theater background is great for creative solutioning. So let's talk about your job hunt, right? You mentioned you sent out 50 resumes. Like, was that over the course of a week, 2 weeks? Like, how long was this process? Like, how did you approach
Uh,
those roles and applying for it? Like, what was the methodology you used?
yeah, so I that was actually over probably a 2 month time span. And uh, I think one, I was still trying to narrow in on companies that I believed were doing something. I think one of the doing something good for the world. Um, and so that sometimes that kind of narrowed my search because I wasn't looking for position. I was looking for yeah, so companies that I thought they were doing something good for the world. And so that was kind of where I started. And then, started sending out resumes, and I spent a lot of time on the cover letters, trying to make like the perfect cover letter. And I don't know if that ended up shooting me in the foot or not. Like it's hard because I wasn't able to actually talk to people.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but I was doing that, but I was also going out to ISSA meetings. I was going to OWASP meetings. I was going to any type of security meetup just to meet people and network. And I still know some of those people today, and they've still actually been really great resources. So throughout that whole journey, I was just trying to learn as much as possible about kind of the right way to do it and be uh, open about my background, what I needed, who to apply for, and that did like lead me places. But initially, I just didn't get any of those interviews. Um, uh, and I think that's and I think that's one of the things to bring up is I think it can be a challenge. I don't think it's going to be necessarily something that people want to get in that's going to be overnight. I mean, it can be a journey. I think realistically, where it could be 9 to 11 months maybe before you land that first job. But what I can guarantee is everybody that I know who's stuck with it for that long period of time has got a job, and it can just be, and I mean, I started getting pretty discouraged where I was like, oh, I made a terrible mistake. I put this
Mhm.
money in. What have I done with my life? Like this is, did I make the wrong decision? And then, for whatever reason, I got lucky and it happened. And I've known, I met this woman who was a Lyft driver who was wanting to go into a developing program. And I was like, no, you should go into cybersecurity. I said, there's going to be a lot more work out there, and we need more women in cybersecurity, and we need more people in general in cybersecurity. And so she actually checked out the same school I went to, um, uh, went there, and then got a job. I think it went about like 8 to 11 months after she graduated, and is really happy with her job now. And again, she's just stuck with it. And I think that's the biggest thing I can say that I would have still been committed to is I wouldn't have stopped until I found a job. And you have
Nice.
to, and and work through that discouragement.
One of the questions from Joe on YouTube is, how have you effectively conveyed your unconventional soft skills as part of the interview or continuing part of selling your value?
I think a lot of it comes up in my trainings, actually. I'd say that's maybe where it's been the most helpful because I've tried to make the security trainings as unique as possible and get people as active as possible. So I've been able to bring like improv, like weird team building exercises into it, and make it pretty participatory as much as I could. And so I think my teaching background plus the theater, plus my background in improv and all the weird games that are out there, helped me to design those things because I mean truthfully a lot of the improv games that are out there, you can use those for anything to build context and to get people to understand something in a different way. Uh, and so that is probably like that unconventional part like helped that team training a lot. And I'd say additionally, um, with theater, no matter what, you get the show done, and you have to. It doesn't matter like what time it is. Like you have a deadline, and you're usually under budget. You don't have enough time. Like you're putting things together with duct tape sometimes, and just hoping that it works. And I think a lot of that knowledge still transfers into security because I imagine there's a lot of people out there that work in security where you're probably under budgeted, probably don't have enough resources, probably don't have enough time, and you still have to get it done. And so I've been like through theater, just getting used to that. Like it's helped me to help to like breathe through it and I'm just used to being in that type of an environment.
Yeah.
And so I think that's helped me where it hasn't been like it's the world's against me. It's been like, well, this is just the way it is, like continuing to try and find a way to make it better, but it's the way it is.
You mentioned you had to learn. One of the questions from Tyrone is, says you mentioned you had to learn how to focus. Can you elaborate how you did this regarding improving your technical skills?
um, uh, that's a good question. I mean, I mean, when I got to this job at Arcs Review, let me give a little bit of context and journey of what happened there.
Hmm.
So this company, we deal with PHI, or protected health information. And so my first job out of the gate is a regulated company, um, which is terrifying. And so I was hired on as a security analyst. So I was going to come in and I was going to be doing log reviews, like working on policy. They just got their high trust certification, which is it's a common security framework that takes like HIPAA and NIST and uh, other common security frameworks, and you put that together. Anyway, there were some major changes in the company, and uh, somebody was let go, and one of our DevOps, like our lead DevOps engineer, left with like a 30-minute notice, because he was upset, and like early startup, we were just transitioning, like just getting kind of our feet under, but so all of a sudden, I went from security analyst to head of security in 5 months, and at that point was now managing like the whole high trust program. I was managing like we're on AWS, and so I was managing our AWS security, AppSec, our network security, our workstation security, and and I didn't, we create applications, and so uh, didn't know how to deploy applications, didn't know, and I just had to learn it. So all of a sudden, I was like kind of pushed into this position to learn as fast as possible.
Hmm.
And with that job, it was just like I learned through the problems, and I learned a ton through the problems. And so like it was one of those things, no mistakes, only gifts. And even though it was tough, that's where I got my true education. And and I'll also realize my own limitations, that I can't know it all. Uh, but like yeah, but the thing that focused me and got me better technically like is having to solve problems as they came up, and I'm still continuing to do that and continuing to learn. Like it's if you go in this industry, it's a lifelong journey to learn and get better. And so you have to enjoy learning in itself and be able to like work through that. um, yeah, did that answer? I don't know if that answered your
Yeah,
question. I sometimes
it did.
off on tangents, so
No, that's fine. That's fine. One of the other questions from Paul is like, how do you go ahead and do your career planning, 2, 5, 7 years? What's your approach to that?
uh, that is a good question. Maybe I might be giving answers that are not helpful for people, because I am somebody who maybe lives a little bit more in the moment and goes step to step. Um, I mean, for me, what I can say is that since I've had this job, I've really got into the medical side of cybersecurity and just
Hmm.
really intrigued by it. And I do believe there's just a lot of security holes that are out there that need to be fixed. And we can all do it better. And it's a team sport, like healthcare system, like anybody who's in the medical field, we can all do it better together. And so I think that's like where I'm trying to see where my focus is going to be. Um, and my initial plan, I mean, ultimately, like I do want to go back to teaching and training and maybe consulting one day, but I will not do that until I've been in the trenches for a while. When I was teaching theater, I was like, no matter what, first you all got to mop the stage and never stop mopping the stage. Um, and you gotta be in it to understand it and to know it. And I really I'm hoping to be able to work for a, a couple other companies within this realm. Again, what I'm doing, I don't think I have a focus yet. I think I'll just keep bouncing around to see what I like and what I don't like. Um, but I definitely will probably stick in the medical and ultimately to go train and teach one day. Like I'd love to go back and start teaching high school and teach cybersecurity in the high schools again. But you got to
Nice.
save up to go do that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Just
an
the
adjunct
way it goes.
professor, and it's definitely a labor of love. So you mentioned that you see some particular holes within medical cybersecurity. Like, what are some of those holes, and how do you think the next generation can help fill that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think partly it's some of these systems are just they're huge, and like under resourced to be able to like sometimes fix their systems or secure their systems or even know what they have sometimes. So I think it's sometimes just under resourced and sometimes understaffed. Uh, and I think it's like honestly, I don't think it's anybody's fault. So I want to be clear about that. That I don't, I know there are plenty of like great security people that are working in healthcare that are still just struggling. And sometimes it can come down to bureaucracy. Sometimes it can come down to old systems. Sometimes where things take so long where you can't move to the cloud. But I think the holes is more people going into that side and being innovative and starting to look at new security tools. Like start understanding how machine learning works in the security world, how we can start automating some more of these security processes, um, really start creating a philosophy. I work in a DevOps shop, and so I've always been trying to figure out how to where security is not a gate, but more ones where we create guardrails. So you can be as creative and as innovative as you want, but you can only go so far.
Mhm.
And I feel like in some more traditional health systems, I think that innovation, that way of thinking, and just we got to move. We also got to move fast. That's the reality of it, because the cyber criminals that are out there they're moving faster, uh, and they have the time to be more innovative sometimes than we have in these systems. But I mean, I think it comes down to more like we just need more people in these places. Um,
So, yeah, you
and
mentioned going back to teach in high school, right? What are some of the ways that we could potentially improve the high school and even before to make more students aware of cybersecurity as a potential opportunity and maybe not have some of the stigma that it had before?
right, it's a good question. Um, I mean, I think like it's hard. I mean, it's being able to get in and get funding for these programs. It's a tough it's a tough question, because I do like just working in it. It's been there's some systemic issues that sometimes happen in the education system, um, uh, but just needing to pilot programs and doing requirements for cybersecurity classes. Like one, even if at first we're doing like one-on-one classes of just how your computer functions, and how you can use technology for good. Um, and I think really maybe that's maybe the clarity is, if we're doing these cybersecurity classes, that we have to emphasize that these skills are for good. Like they really are. They have to be. Um, that's a tough one. I don't know if I have a good answer on how to solve that problem, except I know on my end, at least my dream ending is I'd be going into these schools and trying to sell a program, and like creating a program and going to sell it and be like, we should just try this, even if it's an after school program or even if it's like extra, until something can be like brought into the system at that point, if something doesn't already exist. I did the same thing with theater too. I mean, I created multiple different theater programs and brought them into schools when I was trying to create my own work. And it works if you find the right people. Um,
Nice.
so I think it's tenacity, and like sometimes like if you're out there and you're interested in that realm, you have to create it yourself and like help to bring it in
Yeah.
ultimately.
So we're approaching the end of the half hour, and this is
No,
where
fast.
I would ask that famous last question. Like, of everything you've shared from theater to teaching to cybersecurity, what one piece of advice would you give for someone either following directly in your footsteps or potentially following in your footsteps, so that they could break into the industry themselves?
Um, there's a lot of talk sometimes about that you need passion to get into this industry, and I feel like sometimes we uh, put too much stake in that. And I think to do this, you have to be passionate about learning. You have to have tenacity and be able to just keep fighting through some of the discouragement. Uh, and you should just keep going, like, because it will work. Like if you have those skill sets, it will work. And and I'd also say, like, your journey in this to take care of yourself, because it can be uh it can also be very highly stressful. And so like number one is to take care of yourself, and that you maybe if you're taking classes right now or getting an education, you feeling like an idiot is 100% normal. And you might have to just get used to what that feeling is, and don't let that slow you down. Like it's just part of it. It's the imposter syndrome, but it's a tough field. There's a lot to know, and so that feeling is natural. Talk about it. Talk to people. Be transparent about it. Ask questions, and ask questions. Come at this from like a place of curiosity, uh, and be willing to ask questions, even if you think they're dumb questions. Like do it anyway. It doesn't matter. That's where you're going to get to where you want to be. Yeah, that was kind of advice all over the place. I don't
Well,
know.
that's fine. I mean, that I'm sure someone will pick out one or two of those pieces of advice and kind of implement it in their life. And so, for those following on LinkedIn, thank you for joining us. Those on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. And for those following on your favorite podcast platform, share it with your friends and families. Thank you, Kenny, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.